It's no wonder that in 2021, San Francisco issued only 2,000 permits for new homes. Sure, there are people living in the streets, but that's because we want to make sure the apartments they don't live in are perfect. I don't fear AI anymore because it couldn't possibly be any more robotic than the humans who run things now. In San Francisco, the city's so nice you'll step in poop twice. So the city tried to build a public toilet last year, but then gave up when the cost hit $1.7 million. Not $1.7 million for a public toilet system. $1.7 million for one toilet.
It's finally here. Maher has taken aim at Gavin Newsom for wrecking California, and I'm genuinely shocked because Maher played fanboy to the California governor during a run of blistering tirades about the state. Maher argued that Newsom's overregulation and crushing taxes are what's drowning California. The critique was sharp, biting, and hilarious.
It's the vast network of regulators, administrators, inspectors, contract reviewers, project managers, fee assessors, special commissioners, zoning officers, and consultants whose jobs seem to be to make sure nothing ever happens and then charge you for it. The people who answer the phone, permit office, how may I hinder you?
Maher zeroes in on the California government's obsession with inventing new agencies, offices, and task forces that accomplish almost nothing. Rather than tackling real issues, the state piles on layers of bureaucracy that bring progress to a standstill. Anyone who actually lives in California knows how ridiculous it has become. Even a basic task like repairing a garage door can spiral into a bureaucratic ordeal. You are often forced to obtain 2 or 3 separate permits, each requiring paperwork, fees, inspections, and endless delays. What should be finished in a single afternoon can stretch into weeks or even months. That is the frustration Maher is venting about. His argument goes beyond mere inconvenience and points to a system that feels engineered to obstruct everyday people while government offices multiply without limit. The irony, as Maher emphasizes, is that the more agencies California creates, the less efficient it becomes, trapping residents in red tape instead of letting them get things done.
It feels like San Francisco is actually proud of being impossible. Asked about the toilet, a spokesman for the Department of Public Works said, "We are a city of public input." Okay, but I'm stepping in public output. Meanwhile, the median time to get approval to build a house there is 627 days. That's 217 days longer than it took to build the Empire State Building. You need 87 permits, 15 from the Planning Commission, 26 from the Public Utilities Commission and the Fire Department, 19 from building inspectors, 17 from the Public Works, 10 related to public spaces, and 1 from a guy in a t-shirt that says Federal Inspector.
But you see the insane labyrinth of permits demanded just to build a home in San Francisco. What should be a simple construction process rapidly morphs into a bureaucratic endurance trial. Before a single brick is laid, builders are compelled to navigate layers of approvals, environmental reviews, neighborhood hearings, design boards, and compliance checks. Each permit arrives with its own fees, delays, and consultants all piling up fast. By the time you've cleared the entire permitting process, you may have already burned through nearly 80% of your total building budget. That's before construction even starts. Maher flags this as a central reason housing in San Francisco is outrageously expensive. It's not merely supply and demand. It's a system that makes building so costly and time-consuming that only the wealthy can afford to play the game. The end result is fewer homes, higher prices, and a city increasingly out of reach for ordinary people.
15% of workers in America work for the government. That's 24 million people with one shared vision: to fine you if your mailbox is too big. They say a conservative is a liberal who just got mugged, but it could also be a liberal who just got blocked trying to remodel a porch. Or got a parking ticket because their car was facing out instead of in. Last year, Wyoming began construction on the largest wind farm in North America that will power 2 million homes in Arizona, Nevada, and California. And to think it only took 18 years. Not to build it, to approve it.
It took an astonishing 18 years just to approve a single project meant to deliver wind power to California from Wyoming. Let that sink in. In an era when politicians endlessly preach urgency about climate change, a clean energy project sat trapped in regulatory purgatory for nearly 2 decades, 18 years of environmental reviews, hearings, revisions, lawsuits, and bureaucratic box-checking before anyone could even break ground. By the time approval finally arrived, technology had advanced, costs had exploded, and the political moment had long since faded. This is the exact contradiction critics like Maher point to. Leaders who talk non-stop about green energy while overseeing a system that makes building it painfully slow and nearly impossible. Instead of speeding up solutions, the regulatory maze suffocates them. If it takes 18 years to approve wind power, it is fair to ask whether the system is built to solve problems at all, or simply to stall them forever.
There's an area where homeless people were urinating and defecating, and it was starting to annoy the people breaking into cars. So the city tried to build a public toilet last year, but then gave up when the cost hit $1.7 million. Not $1.7 million for a public toilet system. $1.7 million for one toilet. So then a private company took pity on San Francisco and offered to build them their toilet for free. But after, quote, project management, construction management, architecture and engineering fees, permits, civic design review, surveys, contract preparation, and cost estimation, the free toilet was still going to cost almost $1 million.
Maher keeps up his takedown of Newsom by spotlighting the infamous public toilet fiasco that played out in San Francisco during Newsom's tenure. What was meant to be a simple practical fix for the city's worsening sanitation crisis became a case study in bureaucratic failure. The project piled up nearly $1 million in consulting fees, planning costs, and administrative expenses alone. Architects were contracted, committees were assembled, and endless reviews dragged on. After all that spending, Maher poses the most brutal question. Was the toilet ever built? The answer is no. There is not a single usable facility to show for it. Maher uses this episode to show how progressive governance often incinerates money on process instead of results. It is not wasteful. He argues it is humiliating. A city can burn a fortune debating a toilet and still fail to deliver.
Semaphore estimates that if the red tape could be cut on everything that's currently stuck in the renewable queue, the United States would be 80% zero carbon in 7 years. The enemy to clean air isn't just big oil, it's big permitting. It's not that America isn't able to get anything done, it's that we're not allowed to. Of course, there should be consideration of the environment on everything we build, but as so often happens on the left, they seem to have no ability to recognize when they've taken a concept way too far and are in fact hurting their own cause.
There is bureaucracy in every state, whether red or blue, but blue states like California seem to push it to an extreme. Look at California's treatment of the oil industry, for example. The state has repeatedly stacked new regulations, taxes, and oversight rules that make operating there enormously expensive and unpredictable. Governor Newsom even floated a windfall profits tax on oil companies to redistribute record earnings back to Californians on top of already steep compliance costs and fees. Federal data shows California drivers already pay some of the highest gasoline prices in the country, partly due to strict environmental programs and taxes that can add nearly $1 per gallon. Major refiners such as Phillips 66 and Valero have announced shutdowns or explored selling California refineries, citing the regulatory burden. These cases show how red tape and high taxes on oil can drive away investment and shrink domestic energy production in the state.
America's become Gulliver, the giant that got tied down with 1,000 tiny ropes by Lilliputians, the horde of little people who do big damage. Build back better? Sounds good. So does shovel-ready jobs. As Barack Obama once said, one of the biggest lessons he learned as president was there is no such thing as shovel-ready projects. Environmental impact statements used to be a few pages long. Now they're thousands of pages of legalistic nonsense and take an average of 4.5 years to complete, with thousands of bureaucrats filling out millions of paper forms that kill hundreds of forests to answer the question, is this good for the environment?
Maher unloads on Newsom and his fellow blue state governors with one of his sharpest metaphors, yet likening them to Gulliver, bound by tiny Lilliputians. On their own, each regulation agency or rule appears small, harmless, and even well-intentioned. Together, they become suffocating. Maher's argument is that these governors are not crippled by one massive policy disaster, but by thousands of minor ones stacking up year after year. Every new board, commission, permit, and compliance rule adds another rope, another knot, another delay. Eventually, even the most powerful state governments can no longer move. Instead of governing with flexibility and common sense, they end up trapped inside their own systems, unable to build, fix, or reform anything at a reasonable pace. Maher uses the analogy to show how blue states, especially California, have let bureaucracy metastasize into paralysis. The outcome is not progress, but stagnation dressed up as good intention.
There are people living in the streets, but that's because we want to make sure the apartments they don't live in are perfect. I don't fear AI anymore because it couldn't possibly be any more robotic than the humans who run things now.
Maher argues that Gavin Newsom and his inner circle are incapable of thinking outside the box when it comes to fixing the bureaucracy smothering California. Rather than confronting the system head-on, they fall back on the same exhausted playbook, creating new agencies, adding more rules, and promising reforms that never truly simplify anything. Maher's frustration is unmistakable. California does not lack ideas or resources. It lacks leaders willing to challenge their own machinery. Every problem is answered with another layer of oversight, another task force, another regulation, all of which make the state harder to govern and more expensive to live in. According to Maher, Newsom and his allies are trapped in a political bubble where bureaucracy is mistaken for progress. The result is paralysis. Major issues like housing, energy, and infrastructure remain unresolved, not because solutions do not exist, but because the political will to cut through the red tape simply is not there.
So let me finish with this. Not that there was ever any reason to build it in the first place, and not that there would be any reason to do it again. But just as an exercise in realizing how far we've regressed as the can-do people, I think we should all try to imagine how it will go down if we tried to sculpt Mount Rushmore out of a mountain today. First, we'd have to make the mountain handicap accessible, so we could hire handicapped people to work on the side of a mountain. Then there'd be a 10-year delay while we studied the effect of construction noise on the mating habits of woodchucks. Then another 10 years to obtain ethically sourced dynamite and find a sculptor who doesn't only work from home.
Maher ridicules Gavin Newsom and his political peers by joking about the cost and timeline if America tried to carve Mount Rushmore today. What was once a daring engineering achievement completed with limited technology would now, Maher argues, be smothered by environmental reviews, cultural impact studies, lawsuits, and endless public hearings. The project would not be stalled by granite or gravity, but by paperwork. Costs would balloon into the billions before a single face was even sketched. Committees would argue over symbolism, activists would protest the intent, and regulators would freeze the process indefinitely. Maher uses Mount Rushmore to show how modern governance, especially in blue states, has lost the capacity to build bold, transformative projects. Instead of asking how to get things done, leaders fixate on process optics and compliance. The result is a culture where even imagining something monumental feels impossible, let alone accomplishing.
Many regulations that aren't necessary. You really don't believe that the state we live in, California, is lacking regulation. There's over 300,000 regulations.
Well, maybe they're needed.
They're not. When I tried to put in a garage door, I had to have 3 inspections. There should have been none. I should be allowed to change my garage door.
Are you kidding? Really? It was about a garage door?
Absolutely.
I'm sorry. Yeah, that is...
No, you know this about California.
No, I don't.
Well,
I'm sorry, I don't.
You've never heard that California is overtaxed and overregulated? That we are a one-party state where there's sort of no checks on that sort of extreme leftist.
In the end, Maher's critique of Gavin Newsom and blue state governance goes deeper than a few jokes or viral sound bites. What he is really exposing is a system that talks endlessly about progress, yet consistently fails to produce results. From absurd permitting processes and runaway bureaucracy to stalled energy projects and million-dollar toilets that never appear, the pattern is impossible to ignore. California is not short on money, talent, or ambition. It is drowning in red tape. Maher's frustration mirrors what many residents quietly feel: a government more focused on managing process than solving problems. His Mount Rushmore analogy drives the point home. Today's leadership would debate, delay, and overregulate bold ideas into oblivion. Whether Newsom admits it or not, the message is clear. If leaders cannot simplify, streamline, and think beyond their own bureaucratic instincts, California's decline will not be a mystery. It will be a self-inflicted wound. And that brings us to the end of today's video. If you enjoyed it, hit the like button and subscribe to this channel for more content like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next.